Hello guys, welcome back to another video. Now today we're going to be talking about John Lundstram and his contract situation at the club. Now he currently earns £4,000 a week, and we can argue that even for a championship player that's probably far too little. So he's come into his renegotiations and he wants what's believed to be about £60,000 a week, which for us is probably way too much. It's more than any player's played at the club. And Wilder's come out and said that he's only willing to give him the fourth to the fifth paid player in the club, which when looking over my research, our highest paid player is Jagielka with £50,000. Then I can only find half the squads out of the ones that have been shown on my list. The range goes from around 25,000 to 15,000 for the second to fifth highest paid players, and that's probably without bonuses. So you can imagine that he's probably offered him around £30,000 a week, which I think, considering how he's done for us, is probably a fair deal. I think this is down to the fact that when you look at how he's been part of our success, he's been a journeyman until the Premier League, and credit to him, he stepped up when he had to. He had a lot of fitness training in that season before the 2019-20 season. I saw him play the Northampton friendly and he looked a different player, different physique, completely different person, to be honest, since when you saw him come off the bench in the championship seasons. He had a wonder season last year, and I think this season we're seeing the real player, the player who plays his average, which you kind of want to see, because you're not going to be in top form every week, otherwise that's not your form, that's just your usual play. So I think we saw him at his top level last year, but he's kind of come down to earth a bit now after lockdown, and he's still a decent player. I'd say when you compare him to the midfielders in our team, I'd say Berg's better than him, I'd say Fleck's better than him, I'd say he's better than Osborne and better than Norwood, so he does make it into that top three of our midfield which we play with, but I don't think he's the best midfielder or the best player in our team, granted why we're not willing to give him 60,000 a week. The offer that Wilder's willing to give him is going to be on the table until he leaves, so that's something. If the offers break down elsewhere, then he could stay and he could be given that money and he'd stay a Sheffield United player. Now the question bears asking, do I personally think we should pay him that much? And my opinion is no. I also think it's in the interest of other teams though to get him. If you break down this offer, thank you for somebody in the forum for putting this out there, because this wasn't me that found this out, is if you break down the contract and you were to give him 50,000 a week for 4 years, that works out 10 million. So it means that if you look at trying to find someone as your squad player or even your first team player, 10 million to find the solution is very cheap these days, and to find it on a free is even better. So it's ideal for most clubs in the Premier League to do this. I know Crystal Palace and Burnley in the Premier League are some of the favourites to go for him. I don't think Burnley will do it. They have a very small wage structure just like us, so I think they're out of the question, because even though, like I mentioned, it's almost like a 10 million transfer fee, I think when you look at their structure, it's to completely collapse it, and other players will say, why can't we be paid the same amount? For Palace, I think it's more likely they pay people like Zaha more than 100,000, so it's not going to be out of their capabilities for 60,000 for a first team player who scored a first goal of the season last year against Palace, so maybe that's why I've got their tabs on him even more than most teams. The others is Rangers. Now Rangers, they play in the Scottish Premier League obviously, and we know there's nowhere near as much money there as there is in the Premier League, so whether Rangers can rake that money together is a big question mark. I do wonder though, because him being a scout, just like Gerrard the manager there, he'll be willing to demand less because of the fact he's so desperate to play under Gerrard and possibly further his career. He is at 26, so he's getting towards the peak of his career, so he maybe feels that if he can develop even more, he could potentially be in a top 6 club's minds in the future. I think that's a bit ambitious, but you never know. Now in terms of what he offers to us, he offers an attacking outlet as a midfielder. It was no surprise he's one of our top goal scorers, which was also a worry that he didn't have too much to compete with as our top goal scorer last year, and he scored 6 goals. But nonetheless, he was a big part in staying up because he added both assists and goals to our season and got the goal which got our first win in the season as well. Now if you look at the goals he scores both now and in the Championship, it always tends to be that when he has scored, it's being a late run into the box, which is no bad thing, but it shows that that's the only way he scores his goals. Now as you can see this season, he still tried to do it but it hasn't paid off. He almost scored against City and that was being unmarked, so that was down to him. But I think against Leeds he could have showed Bielsa, I know people overdo it a bit, but the fact he's a clever manager, does his research, he could have pointed out to Meslier, the keeper, that he does these late arrivals and be ready to save. He'll go in this corner, go in that corner, and I don't know if that's overthinking it a bit, but maybe he's being exposed slightly in terms of his finishing ability. Found that out so far, hasn't scored a goal. Missed a penalty against Villa, but I'm not going to hold that against him. Now I think as well, when you consider that what we saw of him last year, he's likely to repeat, so what we're seeing now is the average sort of player. I think maybe he's low on confidence slightly and the team morale doesn't help, so possibly if we were to string a few wins together, we could see a slightly better Lundstram. But I think what we've seen of him is kind of what we're going to get for the rest of his career. And is that worth 60,000 for us? I don't think it is. I think for us there's a lot better answers out there, but I think for us, if we were to accept his demands, it would completely collapse the wage structure that we have. If Lundstram deserves £60,000, then what does a player like O'Connell deserve? A player like Egan, Basham, Baldock, people that have been there for a long time now that have never let us down and have always delivered. You know, it's a very valid argument that they deserve more than Lundstram does, in my opinion. So it does collapse the whole structure effectively. And if we were to get relegated, especially paying the players that amount of money, we could almost go into administration, possibly. Now, when we get rid of a player, someone has to replace them, right? One replacement we have in the squad already could be Fleck. He doesn't offer the same amount of energy, but you've got to argue that we played without him so far this season, so he could be like a new signing. Bit over ambitious, I think. We still need to replace him with someone, but that's one solution. But going into external solutions, people which aren't actually playing for us. Now, the next suggestion I'm giving you, there's no truth in them whatsoever. It's just a few suggestions because there's nothing to suggest we're looking for anyone at the moment, at least no names being given. So the first one is Asamoah. He's currently a free agent. He's played for the past, most notably for Juventus and most recently Inter Milan. He can play as a left mid, left wing back and centre mid. It would be nice to have him as a versatile cover, but if he was to play, it would be as the box-to-box midfielder. He's left-footed as well. Lundstram's been playing on that left side recently, so it'd be decent to have him on there as well. In terms of his wages, he's played for Inter Milan, so they could be quite high, but considering no one's gone in for him yet, he might have lowered his demands quite a bit. That could be another worrying sign that if no one's that interested in him, he can't be that good a player anymore, because I know he was a good player in the past, but being 31 now, maybe a few injuries as well, he could be not an ideal target. Now, one that I mentioned in the past is Besic. I feel like in terms of what he gives to the team, it's written on the tin. He's a box-to-box midfielder like Lundstram, but a lot more aggressive as well, and I think he was ideal to bring on in games to win the ball and to close up shop, but I think starting games he could probably do for us as well. He's not going to get a sniff in that Everton team. He's proved that so far. He's on his last year of his contract like Lundstram as well, so hopefully we could get him for a very reduced price. Whether he's on Wilder's list or not, I'm not sure, but I think it's one that I'd go for. Now, the only one I could actually find, which was any sort of rumour, was to recall Regan Slater. I was currently playing in League One with Hull City, so it's quite a jump up for him, but it was the same with Lundstram. He never really played in the Championship and had to adjust straight to the Premier League, and he did it. So whether Regan Slater could do the same or not, I'm not sure. I don't think he will, but maybe it shows more desperation than actual ambition. Now, another one introduced as a Bournemouth player, plays midfield, and his name starts with a B. It's Billing. Now, the reason for this is because he's a box-to-box midfielder, just like Lundstram, a very big frame and a physical presence in midfield. And I just think he's the sort of player when, although he's had a double relegation with both Huddersfield and Bournemouth now, he looks like a player who, when he's on the ball, is very powerful, and I think will offer a lot of energy for us as well. And was also a shining light for both those teams, but let's hope we don't make it a hat-trick for him this season if we do sign him. Now, the last, very ambitious, but he's a favourite player of mine, Nainggolan. Now, this is a player which is on decline in recent years, but he showed last year he had a decent spell with Cagliari. However, I think this is really unlikely because, for personal reasons, I think he wants to go back to Cagliari for his wife, and also he does have bad attributes in that he likes to smoke and drink a lot, so I don't think that would fit well with the group, and I'm sure, once again, wage demands will be quite high, and it will kind of void the whole argument with Lundstram that if we were to pay him so much, then why can't we pay Lundstram that much? Now, could be trying to be too ambitious, but you could argue the silver lining out of this whole situation is that we managed to move on and find a new shape, new system, because it so far hasn't worked for us this season. Whether that is down to the shape and being found out or it's just down to confidence, I'm yet to be sure of, but you could argue that maybe moving to a new shape could create new opportunities for new players, and maybe getting rid of Lundstram is part of that process. Anyway, guys, that draws the end to this video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think about the whole situation, whether we should reach his demands or not. And one thing I'd like to mention as well is that he shares the same agent as Duffy. We all know how his career turned out. He ruined his career, so could he ruin Lundstram's as well? I'm not as sure there's a bigger case, as unlike Duffy, he had a chance to prove himself in the Premier League, but we'll find out pretty soon, I can imagine. And until next time, guys, take it easy. All the best. Up the Blades. Come on.